In the headlines, the two Koreas hold rare sports talks Thursday to discuss North Korea sending its athletes and cheering squad to the upcoming Incheon Asian Games, but nothing fruitful came out with no date set for the next round. Political parties kick off official campaigns for the July 30th by-elections. 15 seats are up for grabs, the largest ever number for a by-election. And Israel and Hamas agree to cease fire temporarily. Hello and welcome to Primetime News. I'm Kang Chae-ri.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We begin with the Inter-Korean Sports Diplomacy meeting that ended in a huff. The two Koreas held working-level talks on this Thursday to discuss the details of North Korea's participation in the upcoming Asian Games in South Korea.
But it ended without agreement, with the North storming out of the room and no date set for their next meeting. Hwang Seung-hee reports.
Hours of talks led the Koreas nowhere on Thursday as the meeting ended with an angry exit by North Korea.
North Korea accused South Korea of trying to break down the talks on purpose and stormed out after unilaterally ending the meeting. Such action by the North is deeply regretful, and we hope to see North Korea participate in the Incheon Asian Games.
North Korea opened the meeting by saying it would send the largest ever North Korean delegation to the Games. 350 athletes and 350 cheerleaders. Under Pyongyang's proposal, the athletes would travel by air and the cheering squad by car. A North Korean ferry would also arrive in Incheon to be used as housing for the cheerleaders. South Korea said it would accommodate the North Korean delegation just like any of the other teams participating in the sporting event, adding that further assistance could be provided. But when South Korea asked for more details on its plans, North Korea walked away, questioning Seoul's motives. Nevertheless, some experts say the Asian Games could become a platform for Pyongyang to show its sincerity.
So if it works, I think they'll be able to say, well, see, we meant what we said, and let's try something else. Let's have a second step on this. Maybe it will change perceptions in the South enough so that a second step will be easier.
Although no dates have been set for additional rounds of talks, the two sides are expected to meet again before the Incheon Asian Games begin on September 19. Hwang Seung-hee, Arirang News.
If Japan ends up further relaxing unilateral sanctions on North Korea, South Korea says it would like to be consulted beforehand. A high-ranking South Korean official told reporters in Tokyo that Japan needs to see the big picture and know that independent actions could affect the international community's ability to curb North Korea's nuclear program. The official said Tokyo should also keep Washington in the loop about discussions it's having with Pyongyang. Japan recently eased some of its restrictions on humanitarian exchanges with North Korea after Pyongyang reopened an investigation into Japanese nationals abducted by North Korea in the 70s and 80s. The first ever Hollywood film on North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has been receiving more than enough attention thanks to protests by the communist state. Shin Se-min has the details.
The Interview, a film on a CIA mission to assassinate North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, is set to be released in October. But the trailer alone has been enough to stir up controversy, given that it's the first ever Hollywood movie that depicts the young North Korean leader. Seth Rogen, who also co-produced and co-directed the film, tweeted last month that he hopes Kim Jong-un watches the movie and enjoys it. And of course, North Korea is not happy with this film. It called the film as a wanton act of terror and warned the U.S. of a merciless response if the movie is released. North Korea also appealed its complaint to the United Nations. North Korea's ambassador to the UN sent a letter to the UN Secretary General saying the film is an act of war and calls the two directors as terrorists. Now, Rogan, seemingly enjoying the responses his movie has engendered out of Pyongyang, later tweeted again, this time joking that people normally don't want to kill him until after they've paid $12 to see one of his films. And in the latest development, Pyongyang has sent a letter of protest over the movie, this time to the White House. Voice of America reports that the North asked White House National Security Council to review the letter, which said it could not comment on the movie. Now, at this point, there are no signs that Columbia Pictures, the distributor of the interview, has any plan to shelve this film. While they haven't commented on the threats out of Pyongyang, they no doubt are enjoying the free publicity the North is providing them. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The race is on. Campaigning for the July 30th by-elections officially began this Thursday, and the stakes are high, with 15 parliamentary seats up for the taking. Our Ji Myung-gil has more.
For the next 13 days, 55 candidates will be on the campaign trail, battling it out for the 15 vacant parliamentary seats that are up for grabs in the July 30th by-elections. 6 of the 15 seats are located in Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province. 2 are in the Gyeongsang-do provinces, 4 in the Jeollado provinces, while the remaining 3 are in the Chungcheong-do provinces. The ruling Saenuri Party is vying to secure a majority of parliamentary seats through the by-elections, fielding candidates in all 15 races. Seoul's Dongjak-bi district is considered strategically important to both rival parties, as it's the only vacant assembly seat in Seoul.
If given the chance, I will use the lessons I've learned from running the Dongjak-gu district and make sure the National Assembly is working toward improving the livelihoods of the people.
With no clear winner in last month's local elections, main opposition party candidate Ki Dong-min emphasized the importance of victory.
The new Politics Alliance for Democracy must win in all 15 districts, including Seoul's Dongjak-bi constituency, to make a statement against the Park Geun-hye administration's arrogance and stubbornness.
During the campaign period, the Saenuri Party is expected to distance itself from President Park Geun-hye and put more of an emphasis on the candidate's capabilities. The main opposition party will focus on the government's mishandling of April's ferry tragedy and present alternatives to the ruling party's policies. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
New Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan's remarks today at the National Assembly are seen as a veiled support for a rate cut. He said, I can't exactly say what should be done about interest rates, but I believe that my message about the current economy has been sufficiently communicated. Note that in his inaugural speech earlier this week, he said that he will run macroeconomic policy in an expansionary manner to break away from a low growth trap. So the message here that's communicated is the one supporting a rate cut.
Right, a possible rate cut. And a lot of observers have said that the finance minister and the BOK governor have to really get along and communicate more. But already it seems as if there is going to be some dissension. Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ji-yeol expressed concern that household debt is a problem and therefore lowering interest rates may not be the best idea. But finance minister says otherwise, because he said today that a rate cut doesn't necessarily mean worsening household debt. He said it could actually reduce the burden of paying off interest rates and making things easier for households. Right, and especially 70% of household debt is held by high-income earners, so it's not necessarily going to be exacerbating the problem from his perspective. And another place where he is running already into some conflict is among the chaebols, or the conglomerates here in Korea, after he came out and said we may have to tax some of their cash reserves since they're sitting on piles of cash and not returning it as dividends to investors or investing it in future growth. And the FKI, the lobby group, is not happy. But it makes a lot of sense that they're not really happy with this decision, of course, because they're really hurting on many, many different fronts. They are dealing with many external factors, the U.S. economy, the Chinese economy, and of course the strong Korean won as well. Right, so we're going to go into now why the Korean won is actually appreciated the most among the G20 nations, and bringing us this report is our Yu Lian.
The Korean won rose 5.2% against the US dollar in the second quarter of this year. That's the biggest jump out of all G20 member countries, according to the Bank of Korea, ahead of Canada, Russia, and Britain. The currency's rise has been attributed to 27 straight months of an current account surplus and a rush of foreign investment into Korean stocks and bonds. Expectations that the European Central Bank's rate cuts could propel more foreign capital into Asia's fourth largest economy have also had an effect. But export companies are hurting, as a stronger won makes Korean-made exports significantly more expensive for overseas buyers. In a recent survey conducted by the Korea Federation of Small and Medium Business, 9 out of 10 small to medium-sized export companies said the currency fluctuations were affecting their profitability. The situation is only likely to worsen down the road. The companies worry that the exchange rate may fall below what they see as a break-even point of 1,057 won. But economists say the exchange rate may fall even lower.
When the U.S. tapering ends in October, the won may begin to weaken against the dollar. But the upward pressure still far outweighs the downward pressure on the won because of the continued current account surplus and abundance in foreign exchange holdings. The currency may fall even below the 1,000 mark by the end of the year.
Kim says the government needs to intervene in the currency market before the export companies are forced to scale down their outbound shipments. Yurian, Arirang News.
Your gateway to the day's biggest stories in Korea and around the world. Breaking news, the hottest interviews, and a whole lot more. Join Arirang Sean Lim and Kang Chae-ri from the heart of Seoul.
Begins now.
Primetime news, weeknights, live at 10 on Arirang TV.
Turning to some tragic news out of southern city of Gwangju in Korea, where a firefighting helicopter crashed this Thursday morning, killing all 5 people on board. The chopper was returning from search operations at the site of April's ferry disaster when it went down in a residential area of the city. A high school student nearby the crash site was also injured and taken to a hospital.
The explosion made it feel as if the blaze was engulfing the area, forcing us to evacuate. The debris spattering along with the blaze almost broke the windows.
We will have to collect the black box from the chopper to verify the cause of the crash.
Now, authorities are investigating the cause of this incident, but a military official says the helicopter lost altitude quickly before crashing.
Korea is likely to surpass Thailand as the #1 travel destination for Chinese tourists this year. According to a study by a Chinese travel agency, the number of Chinese visitors to Korea has jumped more than 40% so far this year, and it's a trend that's expected to continue. Data by the Korea Culture and Tourism Institute shows that nearly 1.6 million Chinese tourists visited Korea from January to April, up 49% from the same period a year earlier. The study attributes the rise to the popularity of Korean pop music and dramas in China and eased visa regulations. More than 4.3 million Chinese tourists visited the country last year. Korea has experienced rapid growth over the past few decades and is doing extremely well when it comes to things like exports, cutting-edge technology, and the like. But economic development doesn't seem to match up to the nation's level of happiness. A survey conducted by Ipsos Mori, a leading market research company in the UK, found that just 64% of Koreans said they were happy. This placed Korea 19th out of the 20 countries surveyed, being second to last. Spain was the least happy, while Sweden topped the list.
President Park Geun-hye and her science and technology advisors gathered on this Thursday to talk about specific plans to create new growth engines and create more jobs.
The proposed measures are expected to help the government tackle global issues such as aging societies and climate change. Our Chae Yu-sun has more.
President Bak's science and technology advisors pledged to make Korea one of the world's top 7 biotechnology nations by 2020 by fostering 50 globally competitive biofirms and launching 10 new types of medicine. To achieve this, the Advisory Council first proposed turning Korea into the world's largest biosimilar medicine producer by 2016, especially as more than a dozen innovative drugs overseas are close to their patent expiration. The council also talked about investing more in commercializing stem cell and gene therapy treatments and utilizing Korea's advanced IT capabilities to develop state-of-the-art medical equipment. Because of the aging global population and growing health concerns, the advisors expect there to be rising demand for bio-related industries over the next 20 years. As more and more countries look towards eco-friendly energy sources in tackling climate change, the Science Ministry vowed to expand R&D investments into related technologies such as solar and fuel cells and bioenergy to $2 billion by 2020. And the Land Ministry suggested easing regulations and offering tax support to boost construction of self-sufficient zero-energy buildings that minimize energy usage through insulation. At Thursday's meeting, President Bak said both the bio and renewable energy areas contribute to improving quality of life and opening an era of national happiness. She then urged the government and the private sector to work together to create a self-sustainable industrial ecosystem. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
And to talk more about this new clean energy blueprint for Korea, we're joined by Dr. Moon Seunghyun, Director of Energy and Environmental Technology at the National Research Foundation of Korea. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So this ambitious plan of a 2 trillion won market for clean and renewable energy for Korea, or about $2 billion. How would you assess this plan and how feasible do you think it will be?
Actually, while we chose the 6 technologies to be developed in the near future in the R&D and the government supporting the research projects, and we also consider the size of the market and also the growth rate, the market size, and also we check all the numbers already achieved in the advanced countries.
So certainly going with the trend, I guess, on the global stage. And the Korean government explains that this blueprint announced today was sort of to create a business model that's only going to be possible through a voluntary participation from the private sector. Do you think the measures announced today make that possible?
Still, the research funding from the government is needed to prime, the industrial activity. But this time, particularly, Korean government encouraged the private sectors to invest their money also on the technology development, because eventually they can get the benefit from the technology. But this time, all the international agreements should be complied in the very near future.
What would be some of the examples of that, trying to entice private sector's participation in this announcement?
For example, the rechargeable battery, that is one of the technologies that can save the energy. Right. So the electric vehicle using the rechargeable battery is making the big market in the U.S. and the key technology of the electric vehicle is the rechargeable battery, which is coming from the Korean companies.
So again, there are 6 key technologies that were selected as the areas where this massive R&D money will go into. But what are some of the technical challenges for these areas?
Now the China is making the less expensive the solar panel, so we have to compete with the Chinese companies. So we like to use some the semiconductor technologies in the advancing the solar cells. Even though every technology has the certain the barrier, but I think we can overcome.
All right, Dr. Moon, thank you so much for coming in today and your comments.
Thank you.
A new ceasefire agreement to the escalating conflict in Gaza has been reached between Israel and the militant group Hamas, according to an Israeli official.
With more on this story, we turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, the temporary truce requested by the UN expired an hour ago. Is this apparently a new deal with Israel and Hamas, the breakthrough that we've been waiting for?
It's too early to say, as there's been conflicting reports on the situation, with cross-border hostilities having resumed just moments ago after the 5-hour humanitarian ceasefire expired. An Israeli official reportedly said that it struck a deal with Hamas to halt all attacks beginning Friday 6 a.m. local time. However, some Hamas officials have denied that a ceasefire agreement had been reached and that negotiations were still underway. Meanwhile, Israel's military says it is investigating the death of 4 young Palestinian children who witnesses say were struck down by Israeli naval fire. 7 others were also reportedly caught in the bombardment near a beach in Gaza City. Earlier Thursday, the Israeli army released footage it says shows a foiled attack by gunmen who were tunneling into Israel from Gaza. A military source said that Israeli forces fought back at least a dozen Hamas militants, adding there were several Palestinian casualties. And turning now to Afghanistan, government security forces have repelled a full frontal assault on Kabul International Airport by heavily armed militants. The surrounding area remains under lockdown, and all flights are still being diverted to other nearby airports over fears of further attacks. The Taliban has claimed responsibility for the assault on the main airport in the Afghan capital. The militants, armed with automatic rifles and rocket-propelled grenades, opened fire from a roof in the early morning hours on Thursday. The following gun battle between Afghan forces and the insurgents lasted for 5 hours before it ended without any civilian deaths.
4 attackers were killed without any casualties to our forces. 2 RPG, 1 machine gun, and 2 AK-47s were left in the area from the attackers. The operation ended successfully.
Kabul's airport is a major operational base for NATO-led forces that have been fighting the Taliban over the last decade and have been under rocket attacks for weeks. And finally, the entertainment giant Time Warner has officially rejected a multi-billion-dollar offer from media mogul Rupert Murdoch to take over the company. If the merger with 21st Century Fox had gone through, it would have combined the 2 largest players in the cable network business and solidify Murdoch's global media empire. But Time Warner CEO Jeff Bewkes announced that the board voted to turn down the bid, saying it wasn't in the company's best interest. The offer, which has first reported by the New York Times, consisted of stock and cash valued at about $80 billion US. Time Warner owns a range of media properties, including the Warner Brothers movie studio and cable channels such as HBO and CNN. Following news of the failed takeover, Time Warner stock rose nearly 17% on the New York Stock Exchange. However, analysts say it's unlikely Murdoch will abandon the merger plans and is expected to soon make another offer. And that wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello and welcome to Primetime Sports. I'm Stephen Che. The latest FIFA rankings are out, and World Cup champions Germany have risen to the top spot after their success in Brazil. Rising from the number 2 spot, it's been 20 years since they were ranked first back in June of 1994. They replaced Spain, which dropped to 8th. And their sparkling performance in Brazil had much to do with it. Their 18 goals scored is the most since winning it all in 1954, and the 4 goals they gave up to opponents is the second lowest mark in their World Cup history. Meanwhile, South Korea, despite not earning a single win at the World Cup, rose a spot to 56th. And speaking of South Korea, they're looking for a new manager to replace Hong Myung-bo, and a poll shows that Koreans favor someone from overseas. Gallup Korea said that 43% of 681 respondents preferred a foreign manager, while not far behind, 39% said they want a South Korean head coach. Reportedly, the Korea Football Association is inquiring about a range of coaches, including Ulsan Hyundai manager Kim Ho-gon and Danish manager Michael Schoenberg. And moving on to baseball, the KBO All-Star break has officially started, but the festivities are on hold as rain pounded Gwangju Kia Champions Field. The Futures All-Star Game, home run race, and other events were originally scheduled for 5 p.m. on Thursday, but have been pushed back to noon Friday. That allows the Eastern and Western League All-Stars to battle it out at 7 p.m. as originally planned. And in the case of another rain delay on Friday, the game will be scheduled, or rather rescheduled, for Saturday. And finally, the Oklahoma City Thunder's shining star, Kevin Durant, received top male athlete honors at the annual ESPY Awards hosted by ESPN. The 2014 NBA MVP added the latest piece of hardware to his collection, beating out the likes of baseball's Miguel Cabrera, boxing's Floyd Mayweather Jr., and American football's Peyton Manning. Durant was also named the best NBA player. Meanwhile, the UFC's women's champion, Ronda Rousey, won top female athlete. And that wraps it up for now. This has been Stephen Che. I'll see you back here later for more from the world of sports.
Well, if you notice, this summer has been different compared to previous years with less rain and humidity.
I know. I was just outside and I thought it was raining, but it wasn't really raining. It just felt like a very fine mist of rain falling. But of course, our Kim Bo-kyung is joining us to tell us more on this. So I'm a little worried that we may not get enough rain this year.
Well, no worries, as we should get just about enough rainfall to take care of the dryness. But total amount of precipitation will differ depending on which region you're in. Western coastal areas are looking at over 100 millimeters, while most regions should get about 30 to 70. At the moment, both Jeollado provinces are getting heavy rainfall of about 30 millimeters per hour, and showers will gradually taper to an end by tomorrow evening. However, keep in mind that some regions may continue to get sporadic heavy rainfall accompanied by strong winds and thunder through Saturday. On to Friday's readings. Seoul and Gwangju hit 28, while Busan reaches 26. As for other places, Jeju makes it to 28, Dokdo and Mount Kumgang to 26 and 30. That's all for now, but I'll be back with more after midnight.
And that's all for this edition of Primetime News. I'm Kang Chae-ri in Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Have a great evening. We'll see you soon.